Great. Here's your full long-form HOA revenge story for the title. HOA fined me for a gravel driveway I used to build roads for the military. Didn't say a word when the HOA president pointed at the gravel and called it a violation of neighborhood aesthetics. I just reached into my folder, pulled out the military-grade civil engineering exemption buried in the zoning clause, and slid it across the table. Her hand stopped midair, and I watched her jaw lock as she read the words. U.S. Department of Defense Engineer, Infrastructure Recon Design, 1986 to 2003. I'd built roads in the Hindu to Kush Mountains with less drama than this cold-d-sack. Let me back up. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for silence. After 30 years in the service, mostly logistics and civil infrastructure, I retired with a spine full of titanium and a head that didn't sleep too well. My wife and I sold our home in Colorado and found this small property tucked behind a ridge in a quiet, well-manicured subdivision. It wasn't flashy, just a modest one-story house with enough land to breathe, and a view of the distant pines that reminded me of Afghanistan when it was still quiet. I liked the lot, but I loved the gravel. Gravel doesn't lie to you. It doesn't crack in the heat or puddle in the rain. It absorbs, settles. It's honest. So when I needed to redo the driveway, the old asphalt was peeling like dead skin. I called up a friend from my Army Corps days and ordered 3 tons of crushed granite. We poured it clean, leveled it right, and rolled it down tight. No oil runoff, no erosion, no problem, until the letter came. It was taped to my mailbox. Thin paper, fat words, a violation notice from the HOA citing unauthorized modification, a front-facing property and installation of unapproved surface material in conflict with HOA Regulation 12.3b, a $250 fine due in 10 days, a warning that repeat violations could lead to additional penalties or lien placement. I actually laughed at first. I assumed it was a mistake. So I walked over to the office the next morning with photos, receipts, and a copy of the HOA regulations I had downloaded and highlighted. I showed them the clause, or more accurately, the absence of one. Nowhere in Regulation 12.3b was gravel prohibited. In fact, it wasn't even mentioned. The assistant manager blinked at me like I was speaking in Morse code. Well, she said, tapping her tablet, gravel isn't in harmony with the aesthetic continuity of the neighborhood. I asked to speak to the board. They refused. That's when the letters started to pile up, one after another. They fined me for maintenance neglect, claiming the gravel displaced soil onto the sidewalk. Then they cited me for visual disruption, arguing that the color of the stone clashed with neighboring properties. Then it escalated. They said I needed to remove the entire driveway and restore it to HOA-approved materials within 30 days, or face legal action, my wife cried. She said maybe we should just do what they asked. I didn't. I stopped replying instead. Started digging. Not with a shovel with records. I pulled the original land use permit for the subdivision I found. The infrastructure contracts buried in the county archives. I pulled engineering schematics signed back in the early 80s by the state's Department of Public Works. I located the easement documents, soil composition reports, and the military waiver I'd been issued after retirement. A quiet clause that allowed me to apply my veteran infrastructure credentials to civilian projects, including personal property under disaster recovery zoning. Then I got personal. I collected letters from my former commanding officers, included signed statements, from contractors I had trained, one of whom happened to now serve on the state's Civil Review Board. I attached photos of the gravel roads we built in Panama, in Kosovo, in Bagram Airfield under shell fire, and I waited when the summons came, HOA versus Mr. Daniels. Filed in small claims court, I showed up in a plain black suit, folder in hand. Nothing to prove. The president of the HOA arrived with a binder and a smirk. She started reading from the community covenant. I waited. Then the judge turned to me. I opened the folder and placed one item at a time on the desk. The zoning exemption, the engineering license, the military credential, the signed permit, the photographs. And finally, the HOA's own charter, which clearly stated that material Restrictions must be both listed and visually enforced within. 30 days of Marvin. I'd been there for 14 months. The judge didn't say much. He didn't need to. He ruled that the HOA had overstepped its authority, issued unlawful fines, and failed to update or disclose its visual material requirements in writing. The fines were voided. I was awarded damages. The board was given 90 days to revise its guidelines or face a community-wide audit. 3 members resigned that week, but that wasn't the victory. The victory was quiet. It came a week later when I rolled by the mailbox and saw the new HOA letter. Not a fine, not a threat, but a survey. Asking if residents would be open to material diversity in their home improvements. They even offered to host a Veteran Appreciation Day at the clubhouse. I didn't go. I just walked outside, stood on my gravel driveway, felt the crunch under my boots. Clean, simple, mine. Now when I drive past the HOA office, nobody. Waves. They don't smile. They just pause, and that's enough for me.